I forgot to do that. Started so that we can have the notes and reference back if we need that. So for today, we wanted to give you some updates on some actual exciting potential deliverables that we've been working on and drafts of things. Wanted to remind you about the fish migration parade that's on Sunday. And so folks that are in the room, we have markers, but folks that are not in the room, we still have this really awesome poster. So we'd love to see you on Sunday from 1 to 4 at Slater Mill. Thanks, Ed. Thanks for hosting us. And we wanted to go over our site visit that we had on April 26th and some updates from that. So I'd sent out the notes from the site visit. Does anyone have any specific questions or edits from those notes? Okay, great. The other updates from the site visit, we had a few specific questions. One was on the view shed. So there was a question of what the view shed meant, whether it was protecting the view from Slater Mill of the other bank, or if the question was protecting the view when you're driving in to be able to see Slater Mill. Is that something that we know the answer to? Okay. No, that's okay. We can follow up on that. So we don't have Pawtucket Redevelopment with us today, and I know that we were told that their planner that was attending these meetings before is actually no longer in the city, so we don't have a person attending right now from the city of Pawtucket. So I think at some point the Pawtucket Redevelopment Agency will issue an RFP to be able to redevelop a lot of the different sites around where the fish passage would go. So I think we're all kind of curious about what that looks like and what's included. So that hopefully we'll have an update for that the next meeting and be able to review it. Also on the site visit, they mentioned that the city of Pawtucket has Class 1 surveys. Do you know if Fuss and O'Neill or DEM have those Class 1 surveys of those different areas yet?
That might be a Nils question, but I know Nils just provided an update that there is a meeting with DEM and the director of the redevelopment agency on the 21st. So Nils, I don't know if they've shared any information prior to that meeting or if that's going to be discussed then. Feel free to chime in.
Yeah, my understanding is that's the intention is to initiate those discussions and kind of share where we stand with regard to the design and some of the, obviously temporary aspects of construction, and then some of the operation and maintenance considerations or needs that we expect, just so that we can share what our thoughts are and then hear what their concerns and questions are.
Great. Thanks, Nils.
Perfect.
So do we know who specifically at DEM that meeting will be with?
I plan to attend. Jason is on the list. John, I don't know if you're attending as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And then Dean and I'm not. I think just Nils from Fuss and O'Neill.
Okay.
And in that meeting, are we also, is that for talking about the easement as well?
I believe so, yeah. I think the idea is that there will need to be an application or a request for the easement, but they wanted to sit down with the agency before that, just to, again, flesh out concerns and talk about staging needs and that kind of thing. Perfect. And then after that, at some point, there'll be a formal request that needs to get reviewed by the agency. Right.
So another topic that maybe that is part of the agenda also for Tuesday's meeting, but discussing this opportunity to co-plan and co-permit the parks. So both DEM, it sounds like, and the city or Pawtucket Redevelopment Agency, I'm not actually sure, they're both planning to have parks at Elizabeth Webbing Dam. So it makes sense to be able to work together and decide what goes where and who's doing what, and have that permitted together. So I'm assuming that's also a topic of conversation.
I don't know. It's my understanding that the focus is Main Street Slater Hall,
Okay.
just because that's the immediate kind of need, but we can certainly bring that up. I know I can suggest that.
Yeah, I would agree. If there is an opportunity to, again, if people have time to have those discussions or at least share what our understanding is based upon what had been shared at the site visit, to again get any information back will help us to focus our efforts in areas that are going to be most productive in terms of the evaluations. So.
Great. And just to mention on that, the Slater Mill side, the Elizabeth Webbing side, part of the interest that we have too is, so the Blackstone Collaborative had received funding from the SNEP's Watershed Implementation Grant, and part of that grant that we wrote in is we would have some kind of public meeting to talk about the dams and parks and redevelopment. And we've kind of put off our public meetings because we don't know what's happening with the NOAA grant right now, which totally makes sense. Eventually, our goal was to have quarterly meetings that are public in addition to these monthly meetings. But we thought what might be really interesting is to have a public meeting specifically around Elizabeth Webbing, because it hasn't been developed as far. So there's more opportunity of, what's the site layout and what does it look like? And the question is not what kind of fish passage do you want? You should design it for us public, but it's, hey, we're making a really big investment in your community. What are things that you want to see with that? So we've talked about parks, we've talked about a bikeway, we've talked about portaging around the dam. So what are other things that people want to see? And I think a really good example of that is Valley Falls Park, actually in Cumberland, is having this really awesome redevelopment. And John and I were just at a meeting earlier this week on that, where they brought some potential designs and people came and said, move this here, or I like that you have elevated walkways, or I like that you have a public garden, or things like that. And so having some sort of charrette process around Elizabeth Webbing, I think would be a great way to get people involved, to hear about the project and to think about these different aspects that we include. I just want to be able to finish that if possible, or to host that if possible this summer, so that we can close the grant out. So that's not to artificially put a timeline on it, but that was our goal.
I have some conceptual drawings of that park that the students from Penn State did that I share with.
For Elizabeth Webbing?
Yeah, think of that park.
Oh, is that the video you sent?
Yeah. Oh, the video is from that same class.
Okay.
Yeah, we have all that loaded into a big folder.
Oh, good. Okay.
I should share that folder with you
Yes.
too. We shared it with Amanda Bass and the climate person. I think, so I'll share
He's
it.
had some good ideas about Heritage Park also.
This is with Elizabeth Webbing?
Yes,
Yeah.
we had some students visit Penn State Tech students. And part of the project was to come up with designs. They picked out their own project.
For
So-
Elizabeth Webbing?
No, this
But there was a whole
up
bunch of
and down the
different
Blackstone
projects.
River.
Yeah,
Okay.
but some students did pick out Elizabeth Webbing with some ideas. Video
Has that
presentation.
that's great information, has it been forwarded to the owners?
No,
So-
we're just talking about that now.
Okay.
Yeah, so these were undergraduate landscape architect
Yep.
students. So some of the projects are really interesting. Some of them are maybe not in line with things we wanted to. So you have to take everything understanding that, that's what it is. But there's some neat visualizations in
Okay.
there. And there was one about the lower Blackstone Dam's fish passage that I
Okay.
forwarded. I think maybe you were on that, or I meant to put you on that. I forwarded to Stephanie. It's very interesting, and it has some visualizations
Yeah.
of what fish passage later could be. So
That would be great if we could see this, and just
Yeah.
want to match that up with, what
yeah,
DEM has in mind for fish passage or park designation.
yeah. So this was a student's idea about having an eel festival at Elizabeth Webbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they can be very aspirational.
Yeah.
But they're also kind of food for thought if you're gonna have a public charrette, it kind of gets people.
Mhm.
And I know that one of the things that we used to harvest eels as well, so it could really tie in sort of.
Yeah, that-
connections.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can share the different ones from the different parks and share them out with the meeting notes.
But I would say that I'm sure the students would be thrilled to have their work shown around, but if we do use it for anything else, we should probably let them know.
Yeah.
We'll share.
Or check with the professors, see if they have like a public event with the share. That we can share. Sometimes you're.
Anything else on this? So next is running through the project updates that we have. So for one, and you guys feel free to jump in as DM too if you prefer, but DM submitted that letter to FERC. So we talked about that last time, that they were going to be providing a letter about the intentions at Elizabeth Webbing Dam to lower it and have a public park. So that letter was sent in to the dam owner in FERC, and they received it and acknowledged that. I don't know if there's anything else specific to mention.
No, just that there was an initial response
Yeah.
from the hydro applicant. To that. So,
Yeah.
but, you know, suffice to say, everyone's aware of DM's intention. Right at this thing.
So some of the things that we've been talking about of documents being created, we have a draft going. Thank you, Rachel, for that, of kind of a, what is the phase one fish passage look like? So I think we're kind of like breaking that out into maybe two different documents. So one is more of like, you know what the project is, but here's an update on each of the dams, and this is kind of where we are. And then also creating like a what is fish passage, and like taking more information from the website, more introductory. Does it make sense to share those on or the first one on the screen? Look at, yeah,
If you want to do that, we can figure out how to do that.
I
Sure.
can do that.
Yeah, I was, oh, right, because you're in the meeting.
Yeah.
You can email it to me. And I did just want to mention, I kind of mentioned this in our internal team meeting, but if the one page is something you would like to be formatted, and made a little bit glossier, or the reserves admin person is great with that kind of thing. DEM communications is a little, we just lost our director, so they're a little strapped right now, but our admin Lori would be happy to help with that if you want to send it to me. She can add some images and do some formatting.
Yeah, let me just share my screen. So this is kind of like the, oh, I can make it zoom in properly, make it bigger. Sorry, my controls are being hidden. There we go. It's always this like really fun time of what buttons can you see when you have Zoom? Here we go. Nope. Nope, wrong document. So share. Cool. So this is like the update one, and yeah, like Caitlin said, we can format it to make it pretty, but just has like the basics of here are your two dams, this is what's going on, here are your updates. There are some different considerations on view sheds and portages that we would like to include. So very exciting.
Steph, can I share?
Yeah,
something
please.
on that? Yeah, so this update on those 4 lower dams, this is not gonna be any new text to any of y'all. It's pieces of information that are taken from meeting notes, proposals, things like that. So it'll be familiar to folks in this room, but perhaps helpful for the public who's interested in what that phase one is. And as Stephanie was saying, breaking that out into, this is the update on the lower 4 dams, but then having more interpretive, more designing, kind of like, what is fish passage? Something that's intended to kind of draw folks in, like the audience for the fish parade, I think. So, yeah, you approach there.
What will be the pathway forward? What would that look like? I mean, you're developing and putting all this great stuff together, and it becomes a document, I believe, DEM document, Blackstone Collaborative.
Yeah, I think we can own it in that, like, we can post it on the website, which is
Okay.
hosted at DEM.
And that will be the conduit. It'll
I think that would probably be the easiest way. Certainly we can share the link with Stephanie, and the collaborative can post on their website too, but.
Will there be an opportunity to edit?
Yes, I think if this is something we want to have for the fish parade, we're under a little bit of a time crunch, so
I wouldn't
assuming
put
that that's
pressure on
not
you
gonna
for-
be,
Yeah.
okay.
And this has been shared already, so
Okay.
it went out in the notes and stuff. That sent out.
Okay.
Yeah, so everyone has access to it.
And DEM Fish and Wildlife, Park Service.
Yeah, I would encourage you, if you haven't already, take a look. If you have comments or edits, suggestions, let us know. Yeah. And we'll find out.
And you would be the lead for DEM or how? I'm just trying to, I just want to make sure that all this good stuff goes out. Someone in DEM said, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, if you want to forward any edit suggestions to Stephanie and Rachel.
Right.
I can be responsible for making sure that Phil and Jason have reviewed everything.
I think that's what I'm
Gotcha.
okay, that,
Yeah.
that they don't look like a deer in the headlights.
No, we
here.
want their sign off, so yes.
And
Thanks,
to
Jeff.
clarify, this went out in our internal meeting, it didn't actually go out to this meeting. So this, you guys haven't necessarily seen the link to this yet.
Oh,
but
sorry, yeah,
We can do that.
okay.
We'll share it out and then we can review it and then DEM can review it. Hopefully have what we need in there. So similarly, another of the documents that we talked about was this like efficacy of the preferred alternative vertical slot fishway. So this is same thing. I don't know if you want to talk about it. It shouldn't be new taking information.
Yeah, exactly. Same approach, just looking at our existing meeting notes, proposals, things like that. So
And this will be a living document, it'll be draft, the date, and then there'll be updates to it or additions to it, or it won't just stay
no, the idea is that
as it is now.
yeah, so, again, I am new to the group. So I'm just kind of learning like, you know, internal, external.
This is a
all that
great
stuff.
idea, let me just,
This was,
this is a great idea.
one of the action items that was pre-existing, so I just kind of jumping in, taking some of those action items that need to be done, and then presenting a draft for all the input. And yeah, you can see there's a graphic there from all the
That's
considerations.
the matrix.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is a draft, a living document, here for review. Welcome all that feedback. I think I'll probably be the person who's incorporating the feedback and making new drafts and things like that.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, but you know, this is more detailed, so this has, you know, details on progress, and that is certainly something we can update. And then I think the idea was to have something a bit more high level, just, you know, what are we trying to do, what is
Right.
fish passage, and that's gonna be the like kind of prettier,
Right.
public facing document, that might just be like a fact sheet that is more static, but the other thing we can update as they happen.
That's great.
And in terms of website updates, thank you. So the website was updated to talk about this year's fish parade and have a link to that, which is really exciting. Very appreciative of that. And I think, just like you said, it's an opportunity of when we have more of these documents, we can, especially that more public one, like we can share it on that. We actually don't have a specific page on our website about like fish passage per se. We have kind of our Kitticup page, which has a lot of different information on it. So we might make a new one so that we can link to those documents and link to DEM's website. Yeah, any other questions on this?
So you'll be sending out the links to the documents
Yeah,
for
I'll
us
send
to review, and we'll give you a soft deadline, like when we would like to post them by.
Yeah, that's a good
so that you can get us comments.
Just a quick comment, thank you for putting that together.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to see the text, but it was awesome, so.
Well, yeah. It's a little hard to review.
So I will include links to these things in the meeting notes, and do you want to do like a week before the next meeting as like a deadline maybe?
Yeah, I'll figure out what that date is, and if we can include that in. And for the one pager, like Lori's very quick, so we could get her something, especially, you know, if we can get her the photos we want her to use, she can put something together.
Are you guys okay if I share the open kind of our draft Q&A of our, okay, great,
Yeah.
so I'll share that too. I know that's another document that we've been talking about. I'm gonna learn my lesson and make it bigger on the screen before I share my screen this time. So here we go. So similarly, we started putting together this document of answering all the questions that we had way back when, and making it pretty cut and dry if we can. So questions included, I don't want to necessarily go through every question, but like, what is the timeline? So we talked about just as phase one for internal meetings. We have these monthly meetings. We used to have weekly meetings, but now we're meeting a week before this meeting for an hour, and then our internal group will meet for about half an hour after this meeting as well to just kind of check in and make sure we're ready for the next one as follow-ups. So we were gonna have quarterly meetings, but again, for the public, we're gonna put those off. Decision-making, you know, Jason is basically DEM, this is DEM's project. They are gonna own the fish ladder, they're gonna maintain the fish ladder, so they're kind of the final decision maker. We have some comments in here and like we maybe need to update some of this language of like where we took it from, but you know, what does fish passage look like? Are we actually going to do that design? Jason is going to give us these really exciting things that he said he will be ecstatic to look at the fish population numbers and make sure that these are correct for us. And then once we get some draft renderings, we can add those in there too. Questions about Elizabeth Webbing Dam. This is actually an update anyway, so we can go over this one. We talked about this before and we thought about like, do we review the covenant to see what the modifications might be to allow for different levels of changes that Elizabeth Webbing Dam? So if we were to lower it further than what the 2 feet covenant says now, or a partial removal to allow for fish passage, something like that. So DEM is looking internally at that covenant with their internal lawyers, and then we'll make a conversation with Lucia and see where that conversation goes. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that was kind of the decision that was made on the way forward there.
Yeah.
That the conversation Mr. Ian would have to happen before we proceed. Yep.
Trying to find leadership in the country. So, spoke with Bob Millen at the Tourism Council, and he hasn't heard from him. So
Oh, okay.
that's who we gotta straighten the
Is it
conversation
MIA?
out. Yeah, goes back to Taiwan a lot.
Oh, okay, because we might be out of the country for a while. Good to know. Questions about ownership of Riverbank Left, which is a fun question. This is like one that makes sense to wait on because the ownership changed quite a bit lately. Right now it's City of Pawtucket. DEM will maintain fish passage, funding sources. We've kind of gone over these at different times. The earmark was one that was on the list too. So DEM did submit an earmark request I don't know if we have more information about that.
Just that it was submitted through, I believe, through Senator Reed's office, and, I think we discussed whether the intent was to have it be for Elizabeth Webbing, but there's some flexibility there. John, I couldn't think of the word, John.
We had a site visit with Senators Washington and Rhode Island staff 2 weeks ago, I guess. And showed them the entire project, starting with Main Street all the way up to Smith Webbing. You would,
Yes.
yes.
Have a nice
All right,
night. Yep.
I'm not making this up, right?
No.
They appeared to have a lot of questions about the earmark, and it was very important that we really had the site visit, because when they left, they had a much better appreciation and idea of what this is doing and how it all works together. So I'm optimistic that the senator is going to look favorable on this.
So the way that works, just, I was not clear on this, but, each office gets an allotment, so we would be, on Senator Reed's list of potential earmarks. There's a lot of people asking, so we're kind of competing with other projects, but their deadline to submit those requests was a few weeks ago. So I imagine, they're in the process of figuring out, but they do want to use up their entire allotment, so they were encouraging us to put in whatever we need. So I'm guessing we should pursue.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I put timeline maybe long, because I know when we did an earmark request with another senator in Massachusetts last year, a couple years ago, and it was like, hurry up and wait. It was like, you heard nothing for several months, and then all of a sudden it was like, we need something tomorrow, and then you heard nothing for months. So I would just say, don't expect an answer.
Yeah,
on
we'll
it.
try to hear anything about when
Yeah.
we might hear, we'll let you guys know.
Yeah. So we're still waiting on Jason to just kind of like approve some of this information before we ask for additional feedback from the advisory group. But just so you know, it is being worked on. We have a lot of this information here. We want to like get some more specifics to make sure we're sharing the correct numbers and everything for you. But this is in the works. It's not that we have forgotten about it. I promise we're working on it. Yeah.
So and just looking through it, I have like read through it. Is this organized by dam?
No.
Because I feel like maybe it might be nice to just
Okay.
separate out the two, even though there's the same issues,
Mhm.
a lot of the same issues facing each. If that's something you'd like us to help with, just let us know. Once we've answered the questions, we can
Yeah,
kind of
that might be
organize
the
it a little
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, this came from when we had our February meeting, we did that like brainstorming session where everyone did sticky notes, and these are sort of like the themes that emerge, and these are the questions that people have. So that's how it's organized right now. But we definitely, once we have the answers, can move it around in a way that makes more sense. Good. Right. For the draft renderings, I know Nils has been working on that. I don't know if you have an update, Nils, or if you have something that you'll be able to share for Sunday.
Yeah, I don't have an update. Unfortunately, I could not locate a person this is their landscape architect to work on that. So I'm trying to come up with something that is, better than what we have. Unfortunately, I just have to be honest with you on that. We have obviously a lot of things going on, and this is not something I could fit in. So but I will have something there that I will contact you separately, just so we can touch base on that.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, if you don't have it for Sunday, you don't have it for Sunday, right? You can't wave a magic wand.
Yeah.
Like, if that's the answer, that's okay.
Well, the only option is for me to do something, and I'm not a
Yeah.
graphic artist. I'm an
Right.
engineer, and I can make something look pretty good, but it's not going to be beautiful like the way that I would want it to be. So you can let me know. So.
Okay,
If there's a landscape architect that might be available down the road to put something like that together. Maybe the best thing to do is just wait until, if that's within like the scope of what FNO is contracted to do. We don't want you,
Yeah.
spinning your wheels
Yeah.
unnecessarily.
Yeah,
It's not in our scope right now.
Okay,
It is in our planned budget if we get this NOAA grant award.
right, okay.
One higher undergrad who did fish passage part.
well, the balance is it's not just like a theoretical, it's what
I
will
know,
this one
off
look
of,
like.
no, that's what I mean,
So-
off of their plans.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know, I'm not enough of a landscape architect if someone outside, I mean, they won't have for this week either, but
I know.
yeah, maybe that's a conversation, Nils, that we can have of, does it make sense? Is it helpful to have like a student use your design to create a rendering, or does it make sense to just have it in a contract for the future so that we have what you want?
Yeah, I had reached out to a RISD grad at the Rhode Island Flood Management Association conference last year, and that person was very interested. I walked the site. Very, very talented person. He's graduated now, but I'm sure that there's somebody else who probably could help. And like I said, we have staff that are available, but we just need to schedule their time well in advance. So if I know that I'm going to have a rendering that needs to be done in July or whenever it is, the sooner I know, I can schedule the time that's needed, because I've had many conversations with other landscape architects in my office, and they're all very excited to work on this, but we just need a budget to work with.
Yeah, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, the next kind of big event where it would be something that we would share would probably be the fall intertribal gathering, which is usually October. Is there another event before that? I mean, we have the paddle coming up, but the paddle's more focused on recreation than it is fish passage, so probably October, I would say.
Yeah.
There might be supplemental district program funding, right?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, great. So I mentioned the DEM website got updated, and I wanted to share that on the screen as well. So I had a question about that, and this is, you guys haven't heard this yet, but right now I feel like the website is like a little bit confusing because it doesn't quite give you the breakdown of like the what is fish passage part yet and the breakdown of the dams yet. So I'm not sure if it's worth kind of trying to make edits now. It does have this, which is great. Or if it makes sense to just wait until we have that kind of one pager and then do it all at once with the updates of the dams. But right now it's kind of all meshed together of we'll lead the development of a plan by 2024 around all of these dams.
You want more of the general information about fish passage up there?
I feel like if I was someone just introduced to this project, I still wouldn't necessarily know what was actually going on.
Yeah.
It'd be like, oh, this is a thing that you're theoretically working on, but like what's actually happening?
So I would think like once we have those documents, it could be like in a box that says like, want to know more about fish passage, click here, want to know more about what's happening on Blackstone. And then we would have that document that's like up to date and
Yeah.
they're updating on it.
It sounds good.
But we're happy to, field updates to this. If you notice anything that's wrong or like, please, we can pass that information along to Emily, who's the DEM person who's doing the website.
So I had just, let me see. Yeah, it says like, RIDEM purchased Elizabeth Webbing, requested Army Corps of Engineers assistance with feasibility study to evaluate fish passage restoration alternatives in Central Falls. They will look at a variety of fish passage alternatives, including dam removal, nature like fishway and Indian ladder. So I feel like we have more information.
Yeah,
Then
it could use an update. Yeah.
But it, probably makes sense to put everything together first and then have all the updates together instead of asking them to do updates every week. And if anybody else has other thoughts on language, For DEM updates, so do you want to mention, I know you talked about the Blackstone at the last tribal engagement meeting.
Yes, I mean, I did not attend that meeting, but Jason, it was on the agenda and Jason brought it up. And, you know, it was one of many things that were discussed in that meeting, but Dina Lynn Spears is going to be our point of contact going forward for anything push passage. So we'll continue to put it on that meeting agenda so that if there are tribal opportunities that they're interested in being involved in, we can kind of get ahead of that and
And then for the other one on funding was DEM is working with the Narragansett Estuary Program. We talked about potentially having a project manager for this to help put together these kinds of meetings, to be like a point person, because we're always like, who is the point person, right? Because it's a little bit of everybody. So they can know what's going on with the tribal engagement, they can know what's going on with the engineering, they can know what's going on with the public and all these different aspects. So it'd be really helpful to have a project manager. So the Narragansett Estuary Program is exploring whether they can help fund a project manager to probably start at the end of 2024.
Yeah, and we're kind of referring to it as a river connectivity specialist.
Yes.
Or river connectivity project manager. So the idea would be that this person would be available and that most of their time would likely be dedicated to Blackstone, especially up front, but that if that, you know, assuming that's not 100% of a full-time position, they could be working on other things related to river connectivity and push message. So
That person would be available for a one-year period?
we're talking about 1 year of funding.
1 year of
So
funding.
it's not to say we couldn't pursue funding to extend that position, but that's what the estuary program is offering.
Where would the person be located?
They would be a contract employee located at DEM. So we're still kind of having those conversations. So like whether they would sit at Fish and Wildlife or planning and development, you know, we'd have to work that out. And
This is really important.
yes, yeah.
And I see it all the time, running around with DEM, who are trying to, the fish and Division of Fish and Wildlife is like overwhelmed, understaffed. They've got like 30 fish passage facilities throughout the state that they've got to take care of. They've got broodstock enhancement, monitoring, all this stuff. And then there's all the new stuff that we're trying to infuse into the program. Blackstone, Potter Hill, pockets of aquatic organism passage throughout the headwater streams. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And to have an individual work somewhere with Fish and Wildlife to address these would really, really be a major help.
Yeah, we had a great meeting with our Sion, director of the estuary program, Jason and Phil and myself. And I think how we envision this position is that they don't need to be the subject matter expert. So they will work with DEM biologists, but they don't have to be a fisheries biologist. If they have that background, great. But really, this is a project management position. So it's more about kind of completing administrative tasks, organizing this advisory group, you know, or helping to organize, make it happen. You know, engaging with partners, moving specific tasks
And it's a
forward.
piece of the puzzle
Yeah,
that is missing right now. Like the Nature Conservancy has a cooperative agreement with DEM to provide fish passage engineering services. We have a contract with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Fish Passage Engineering team to come in with an engineer to assist. So that those technical expertise they're available, but it's just that someone has to weave this all together
Exactly.
and keep track of it for DEM.
Exactly.
So this is great.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for also things like, oh shoot, we don't have an easement yet. You know, there's a person to say, I've identified this gap and let me figure out how to solve it.
Regulatory and permitting, yeah.
Yeah,
for
there's
sure.
a lot of, it's a complicated project, and just like you said, there's so many other aspects too. It's not just like, we can selfishly say as Blackstone people, like, all Blackstone all the time, but obviously, you know, restoration and connectivity is a much bigger question, so.
And I'll say that, the estuary program wants to fund this because their steering committee said that it was a priority, so we all kind of got together and voted on priority issues, and this really rose to the top, so it's definitely been recognized as something that the estuary program wants to support, so.
And the estuary program is funding work on the Blackstone. They're funding work on headwater streams. I mean, they see
Collaborative, right.
your position, Blackstone Collaborative. So this is great. This is good.
So the idea is that that funding would be available this fall, so we will work to iron out details of how that contract is going to work and with who, with which organization, and where that person will sit and who they'll report to. So.
And, you know, it's exciting that it hopefully would last as an addition, you know, another position ongoing that wouldn't just be Blackstone, like you said, but
There will be more projects, so.
so much to work on.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of us have talked about like, it's easier doing this stuff in Massachusetts. No, Rhode Island and Mass, like Rhode Island does a lot of stuff better than Massachusetts. I will totally give you that credit. But one thing that Mass is better at is the restoration, because they have a division of ecological restoration, and that makes all the difference in the world. So, you know, seeding
Maybe
something
this is the
to,
seed. Yeah, we'll
exactly,
see.
yes, exactly.
Concerned about the 1 year plan. You get someone in the door, you get them up to speed, they're already looking for a new job. Their focus, their concentration isn't necessarily on their job, because they know that at the end of this time, they're out on the street. So
One of the things that could play out with that, because I did hear the conversation of what organization, who, how they develop their contract, could be within an existing organization system that has funding for other things, just a supplemental funding. And then I think if it's thought out that way, it could, either way, even if they are seated here, because it's one of those things that they can still have their obligations.
There won't be a DEM employee.
Right. It's a
They're going to
contract.
be an Narragansett Bay Estuary Program employee,
Right.
which as I understand.
Which could be from, but it could be from one of the organizations as a contract, it's contractual initially. But it could be the beginnings of the way of also helping the organizations that work with Owens Rivers to embed the idea of some of the things that Massachusetts has. That are
Yeah. And the concept of growing an ecological restoration division here has been brought up and discussed and supported. It's the funding, you know, capacity. So I think establishing the position, if we've got seed money to start and support that position for a year, it's also something that can be written into projects as we apply for funding. So this could be a soft money funded position as much as it needs to be. And then, yeah, we would always be looking for additional support to extend it.
And one of the things I think also gives us an opportunity to sort of what that looks like, because of being the estuaries, we all have sort of some.
So Steph, you shook your head no when I said it would be an Narragansett Bay Estuary Program.
Likely they would not be employed by the estuary program. We'd look for a different entity for them to, you know,
You
to
look
do the
at
contract.
TNC.
So it's, DEM has, you know, Atlantic States Marine Fisheries,
Okay.
contract employees, TNC contract employees, Audubon Society, so it would be probably not popular. So more to come, but I think it's a positive step forward.
Where's the match money coming?
We're working on that too. That's gotta be state funding. It'll, you know, fish a lot, but I'm guessing that we have to figure that out. It's gonna be around 25K, so I think it's.
Well, consider financial conservancy. We already have 5 employees over here.
Right, yes, we'll be talking, I'm sure.
I feel you on the budget thing, but yeah, I really do hope that it's the start of more things. I mean, Kaylee and I are only ever funded for 6 months in the future, basically. And we are, I hope, I speak for myself, I'm not looking for new jobs. I'm looking to just get more money to continue our work, so hopefully.
Any other questions, thoughts, updates on different project aspects? Everyone's happy. So it's 12:20, our meeting goes until 12:30, and that was our whole agenda, so. Yeah.
So the tribal engagement person, are they working under the authority of the tribal council? Because I think that's gonna be an important aspect to have
Are you referring to the, on the
Narragansett side.
Narragansett
Yeah.
side? Dina Lynn is there. She is the head of their, it's the like Community and Natural Resources
Okay.
Office for the tribe, I believe. I'm probably getting that wrong.
Yeah.
Community planning and natural resources.
Community planning and natural resources. Correct, yeah.
That'll just,
No, that's a good point.
that's always the question, because that whole, because I know especially with funding, it's like a lot of times, even though you have the person say yes, you have to have the resolution.
That's not
From the
enough
tribal
authority,
governments,
right?
yeah.
Yep, no, thank you for bringing that up, yeah.
Anything else? So our next meeting is scheduled to be Thursday, June 20th. Same thing, 11:30 to 12:30 hybrid in this room and on Zoom. Before then, we'll put together the updates. We'll give you the notes from this and different documents that you can review and give us feedback on. Is there anything specific that you, other than kind of the updates that we can provide, anything specific that you want to talk about or focus on?
We could probably provide an update on the meeting with the redevelopment agency.
Yes,
at that
yep.
point.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think I'm most concerned about the redevelopment agency and getting someone from Pawtucket to attend these meetings so we can have good communication with decision makers both at Pawtucket and within the redevelopment agency.
Okay. Well, thanks all for coming, and we were super efficient today. I feel like we were always running out of time, so.
You got us right on that list.
Yeah, that was great. So we'll see you next month on June 20th.
And on Sunday.
Yes, and we'll see you on Sunday.
That's great.
It's gonna be so fun. We have costumes, we have a really giant, like 15-foot tall park ranger with a fish head. We've got like a fish you can put your face in and take your picture where you look like a fish, like it'll be fun. Face painting, food trucks, good stuff. James Beard Award winner. Jerry Conklin is gonna be coming with a pop-up with Indigenous inspired cuisine. It's gonna be
Wow, that's cool.
very, very cool. Right,
Awesome. Thanks
Yeah.
all.
thanks.
All right, bye, everyone.
Everybody, have a great day.
Two.